We're going. I'm recording.
Okay.
Today on the Big Fat Podcast, thank you, by the way, for tuning into the Big Fat Podcast. Today we have Mr. Cole Waltner. Cole?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing really good. Didn't even switch over to you right there. We were just talking about the auto switching. I should shut my mouth so it'll switch over to you. Man, I'm glad we were able to get together and do this because I was not aware. I've actually been aware for a long time that it's odd how much you and I have in common. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but I've thought about that. I'm like, when I moved here like in 2007, and then we met sometime after that, we started to actually exchange books at one time. I read a couple of books that Cole gave me.
Yeah, I remember that.
And yeah, and one of the books I've actually been trying to look for to get it on my own. I'm hoping I give you back your books. But it was crazy to me how much we had in common when it came to books, when it came to history, when it came to everything else.
Yeah.
And but anyway, before we get all into that, give us a little bit of background on you, on who you are and what you do here in the community and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm a corporal at the Stillwater County Sheriff's Office here. I've been employed by the county since 2008, so I'm more than halfway through my law enforcement career. And about 2013, I needed to find a hobby because law enforcement can kind of get on you a little bit. If you do any kind of reading or anything like that, it's a high-stress job. High-stress jobs have a really big impact on anxiety and stuff like that. And, you know, we see people at their worst. You know, we never get to see people at their best. And that takes a toll on a human body. We're not meant to constantly see people at their worst. And so like in 2013, my best friend had just come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and he just wasn't himself. And he had been into photography for about 5-6 years before that. He came up to stay with me. I had our first child, and our second one was just a baby, and he wanted to hang out with everybody and try to get back in his routine. And he's like, hey, let's go take some pictures. And I'm like, well, I don't even have a camera. He's like, yeah, I got one. Let's go. And so we went up to Woodbine, south over by the mine, and took some pictures of birds, Woodbine Falls, just some landscape stuff. And I was hooked. I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. It's like another way for me to be outdoors and kind of forget about everything I do at work. Because usually you get that during hunting season or, when I'm playing softball or baseball or doing something like that. But I wanted more. If I'm outside, I'm happy. That's just been me since I was a little kid. So like 2013, I went with Zane and we went on this little photography trip just for 2 or 3 days, just kind of around here. And man, I was hooked. And then, so like 2 days later, I talked to my wife. I'm like, hey, I need to buy a camera, and I'm the guy that goes all out. And I'm like, I don't want a $50 camera.
Right.
So I went and got like this $400 T3i at the time. They were a mid-grade entry-level Canon. And I was like, I need a big lens. I need to take pictures of wildlife. I was like, I don't like people anyway, so I want to take pictures of animals. And got this $1,000 lens right off the bat. Had no clue what I was doing. I spent like 4 days like glued to my computer on YouTube. And I'm just like, leave me alone. I'm going to figure this out. And so after 4 or 5 days, and I was like, let's go. Let's go take pictures. And we went for a drive. I took a few pictures. And I'm like, man, this is cool. It's just like hunting, but there's no killing involved. And don't get me wrong, I'm a conservationist. I love hunting, and I'll probably always do it. But there's something different about capturing the behaviors.
But the other thing about that is it's year-round. Like, you don't have to wait for a certain season.
Right.
You get to go out there and go stalk animals and get the excitement, and you get that shot. It's just a different kind of a shot, but you get to go out there and tromp around with a purpose.
Right.
Not just scouting or whatever, but you get to go out there and get the shot.
Exactly. And it's made me a better hunter because I'm spending more time with the animals, watching their behaviors, seeing how they operate in their niche. And then when it comes time for hunting season, it's opened up this whole new world. There's times hunting where I don't pull the trigger. I'm just like, this is too cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pull the trigger.
And you get to do it anywhere and travel anywhere. So you can go anywhere world and take photos where you can't go hunting everywhere.
Right. Yeah, because it's super expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Oh, yeah.
expensive.
So
So that's neat to be able to put the travel aspect into it and go
Yeah.
everywhere.
And so about 2015, I started getting really serious into it and going places. And I kind of got hooked into this bird photography thing just because everywhere you go, there's birds. I can go to downtown LA, and I did. I went to downtown LA 2 years ago, right before COVID hit, for a documentary on a search and rescue that we did with the sheriff's office. Long story short, it didn't end up airing. There was a whole bunch of other issues going on. But, man, I was in L.A. looking for birds. I mean, who does that, right?
Yeah, that is.
But I'm walking around our hotel complex. And I'm like, oh, look, there's a bird right there. And I went in, grabbed my camera, and people are looking at me. I mean, this is L.A. And there's some weird people in L.A. They're looking at me like, who's this guy walking around a hotel complex with a camera?
You know, you'd think that they would be like, see people with cameras all the time, like paparazzi. Like they're probably wondering, like, why are you not like following people though?
Right. They're like, what are you doing? Like, there's a hummingbird that I've never seen before in that tree.
Yeah.
Is it famous? Like,
Yeah.
well, to me it is.
Right.
You would get along
You know?
great with your parents.
Oh, I know.
Your dad. Oh, yeah.
My parents actually for Christmas got us 3 bird feeders. 3? No, not bird feeders. Bird houses.
Bluebird houses.
Bluebird.
Yellow and.
They're yellow, and my dad made them.
Yep.
And they have bird houses all over in their yard. And that's just their thing, is they feed tons of bluebirds.
Watch them. They have
And
sounds, like this thing that tells them what the bird is from the sounds.
Right.
And yeah, they're way into it.
Yeah. So they got us a bunch of bird houses, and so once the spring gets going, we're gonna put them up and put them out there and everything. But yeah. So you started off shooting birds mostly.
No, it was just like going around here, around the local area, deer, coyotes, foxes, elk, and then Zane, my best friend that I alluded to a little bit ago, he's like, hey, let's go on a trip specifically for birds. He went to college and really got into the bird thing. He's just like, dude, you know how many birds there are in the world? I think Montana has like 436 or 413 recorded species of birds just in the state of Montana that come through here either during migration or breeding, or they winter here. Like right now, I've got 30 common redpolls. It's a little finch bird with a little red tuft on its head. They come down here to winter, and they actually spend most of the time up in the tundra. And so you're taking pictures of birds that are like in Alaska, mostly.
Oh, wow.
And then they're here. They're in my yard right now, and my wife is like, really? There's like 30 of them. I'm like, I know, it's so cool.
Yeah, how far they travel once you really get to know, like, I don't know. I think a lot of us, there's been plenty of times in my life where I think about it now more, but definitely there's been times where you just take certain things for granted. These things are just going on around you. You don't know what they are, but
Yeah.
it makes it way more interesting once you start to realize, like, oh, these guys just flew like 3,000 miles to come sit in my yard. And it, I don't know, somehow makes life a little bit more interesting, a little brighter or something.
It does.
To know all that.
And for me, it's like I'm constantly learning. It's like there's so much to learn when it comes to wildlife and birds. And, you know, every day I learn something new. It's like, oh, that's a sound that they make. I didn't know that. I mean, even like the American robin, something that we see year round here, and they're in everybody's yard. They're doing all these things. But have you ever actually sat and watched their behaviors and what they do and how they, and different sounds that they make? It's like, dude, you're learning something every day. So I really got into the birds about a year and a half after I started taking pictures. We went over to western Montana for a specific bird. So we drove all the way to the west of Missoula for a specific bird called the Lewis's woodpecker. It's a medium-sized woodpecker that actually, you know, feeds on insects and stuff as well, not just, you know, pounding on trees to get grubs and other insects, but it flies around grabbing insects. So it kind of has characteristics of, you know, kind of like a small hawk or something like that, the way they kind of fly around, stuff like that. Well, we got into these, it's Council Grove State Park on the, over by Missoula. And we were over there in the spring, and it was like instantly we started getting pictures of them, and they were all over. And I was like, man, this is so fun. You know, trying to get them while they're flying, while they're going back and forth between nesting and feeding. And dude, I was hooked. I was like,
it makes you be in the present, though, too. Out of a lot of hobbies and a lot of things, it makes you stop and just be present in what you're doing.
yeah.
Well, yeah, you
which
got to
is
be able to.
huge. Like, it's almost a form of meditation.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Is
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be a great release to like forget about everything and just
Be in the
focus on that. Just focus on that moment.
Totally. And so it was like that trip. We did Council Grove State Park over on the western part of the state, and then we went to a place that's really cool during the migration called Red Rocks over kind of southwest Montana. It's 2 or 3 lakes. It's a wildlife management area, waterfowl management area, and we spent 2 or 3 days there just taking pictures of migrants, waterfowl, different ducks, stuff like that. And man, I was hooked. You know, it was just like, this is awesome. You know, kind of nerdy, but I'm a big Star Wars geek too, so I really can't get any more nerdy. you know?
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
like, I'm just going to roll with it. And
You know what, though? As you get older, though, like, what does it really even matter?
right.
You know, you
Right.
start to be like, oh, I'm turning into that guy who doesn't
Yeah.
really care. And that's great. That's like freeing. And you're like, I don't care. This is what I'm into. And then when you're like okay with that, everybody just appreciates that this guy's, he's into this, he's into this, he's into this, and that's who he is. And I don't know. I think it makes you more, I don't know,
It's
more likable.
yeah, it's not like in high school when you had
Yeah.
to do these other things. Oh, don't be a nerd because that's not cool. You know, now it's
Right.
like that's the cool thing.
Speaking of getting older, you're hitting 40, huh?
In 2 days. I'm a
Oh
New
my
Year's baby.
Gosh. Are you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're born on New Year's?
I was born on New Year's.
Wow, that's literally a new year. New year.
Right.
New
Well, and I'm
birthday.
not a big resolution guy, but they're like, you're the guy with the birthday, literally, on New Year's. I'm like, I know, but resolutions to me don't make sense.
Goals.
Like, well, not even that, but all I want to do is be a little bit better tomorrow
Yeah.
than I am today.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, why am I going to try to? It's a new year, new me. No, it's a new day. You
Yeah.
know, just one day at a. We only do one day at a time, so I'm not a big resolution guy. But yeah, so I'm a New Year's baby.
Wow.
A lot of them I was a little hungover on. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Once you turn 21, you're like, whoa, this is kind of cool. And then you're like, oh, I have a birthday. I have to eat cake. I don't
Yeah.
want to do anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I turned 40 in 2 days. Kind of freaking out about it, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like this could be the best decade of my life. I mean, I'm finally figured out what I want to do with my life outside of law enforcement.
Yeah.
You know, I've got that group of friends that probably took 40 years to find. I mean, I
Yeah.
have my best friend Zane that I've known since we were in diapers, and we've been able to spend the last 4 decades doing stuff together. And he lives in Alabama. He's in the National Guard. He's a stand-up guy. He's amazing. I don't know what I'd do without him in my life. And then there's a couple of people around here that I've grown up with that we're still in contact, my brother and sister. I mean, so it's like I'm freaking out, but at the same time, it's like, dude, this is pretty cool. So
Does your brother? I know you guys are both in law enforcement, and does he share any of these passions with the photography? Does he go with you on any of these trips?
not so much with photography. He likes to travel. So we've done some traveling together. Of course, we do the hunting and fishing together. He's a big fisherman. He loves fly fishing. And so he's really never got into the photography thing of it. But as long as he's outside doing something, he's happy. You know?
Wow.
And that kind of that's just from my dad and my
Yeah.
mom. I mean, we grew up, my dad was a saddle maker, you know, and so it's not like he ever made
Really?
a bunch of, that's what he actually did. He went to, after he quit ranching and working on ranches when we were born, he went to school and became a custom saddle maker. And that's
Wow.
what he did. He had a boot and saddle shop here in Columbus when I was growing up until he got hired on at the Silversmiths. And then, but all we could afford was going outside,
Yeah.
you know, camping, fishing, that kind of thing, trapping. I mean, I remember when we were little, that's how we made Christmas money. That's how my parents got us presents, as my dad would run trap lines,
Wow.
and then that's how they pay for Christmas presents. And so that's all we knew. My grandparents were the same. My grandfather's a professor. I mean, he taught at Eastern Montana College for years and years and years and years, but we spent our summers with them camping. You know,
Wow.
and that's where probably my love for photography came from. Is I remember we were over in Wyoming camping, and we hiked to this lake to go fishing, and my grandfather has a camera around his neck all the time. It doesn't matter where he's going. I mean, he's probably got 60 cameras at his house, and his house is just full of pictures that he's taken over the years. But I was probably 9 or 10, and we went to this lake, and we had to hike to it, and we were tired because we were little, and my grandparents had to get water, you know, so they had the water filter out of the lake, and my grandmother was holding onto the camera so my grandpa could get the water. Well, she fell, and he didn't ask if she was okay. Is everything okay? How's the camera, Bonnie? Bonnie, did you drop my camera in the water? And I'm like, dude, even at 9 years old, I'm like, aren't you supposed to ask if your wife is okay?
Yeah.
Because all he cared about was the camera, you know.
Yeah.
Even then, I mean, I probably knew somewhere and I'd get into photography. My uncle, he is big into photography. Him and I go all over, you know, Yellowstone Park a dozen times a year or more to take pictures. But
Wow.
yeah,
Well, that's also really fortunate to be where we are in proximity to that type of thing. And just, I don't know, there's so many great areas around Montana. That's awesome. I'm originally from Southern Nevada, and this place is like the promised land to me. I come up here and I love this. I love this whole area, but I kind of gotten into photography a little bit in my own little way, not quite obviously to the level you have. I wish I could get the time to do that. April, I've actually talked about it with April quite a few times where I'm like, we just need to make some investments. I need a Canon. Like lately my thing is I'm like, I need a Canon R5. I'm like, and all the time I'm telling her, I'm like, and I don't even know enough about it, but I'm always telling her that. I'm like, I just need to go drop $5,000 on a Canon right now. But anyway, we're not quite at that point. And that and some good lenses to go out there and bring some wildlife in really close. I've actually talked to her about this, and it fascinates me too. It's like something that just doing this for what we do with our business and little things that we do, I've been getting an appreciation for the art of it, but also what a way to get out and have an excuse to go to different places and shoot different things. Like that part, I'm envious of that, to be able to take or make that time to go do that, go travel around these little spots. You got great proximity to these things around here.
Yeah.
To go do that. So I think that's awesome that you're getting out and going and doing that and pursuing that.
Did you ever go, I gotta ask you, you said you went to Missoula. Did you ever go to that conservation outside of Stevensville? There's a big conservation park out there for water. It's protected.
No.
Waterfowl, birds, tons of hawks and eagles. So it's just, right outside of Stevensville there, and there's this big, and you can go hiking all through it and stuff. It's really neat. So if you're ever over there,
No,
again,
I'm
you
gonna
can
have to
check
go
it
now.
out. Yeah, it's really neat. And the woodpeckers, like there was some I don't know what kind of woodpeckers.
Probably if they're big, they're probably
Yes.
a pileated woodpecker. They got a red head and a big
Yes.
black body with a
Massive.
big long beak. Yeah.
Yes, massive.
So they're a target list bird. I've never been able to get one. I've gone to places specifically for them, and I can't ever find
So
them.
you'll definitely, if you're that way, check it out. So it's a big place.
And so that's another challenge, is that there's target birds. It's like, I want a picture of this bird. And so I'll go wherever to try to find it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't, but that's just how it goes. It's like, oh, I get to go back.
Yeah.
And for me, that's another part of the challenge, is like, I want this bird and this bird and this bird.
Yeah.
And so I'll find, like when I went to Texas, we had a list of the top 10 birds that Zane and I wanted to get. And 2 of them are like on the top 10 list of birding, period.
Oh, really?
A green jay and an elf owl, the smallest owl in the world. I mean, they're super small. And we actually got to see 3 of them.
Oh.
3 elf owls, and we got tons of green jays, and so like, and
where did you see those elf owls at?
we stayed in now I'm gonna forget where we were at, but it's in the Huachuca Mountains.
Okay. In what state?
Oh no, that was in Arizona.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I saw one in Texas, down by the Gulf during the day.
Okay.
And I got really crappy pictures of it, but the ones we got in Arizona, the elf owl, we got at night, and we had we were with a guy that kind of guided us into them, and we knew where they were nesting, and so that was really cool.
So how big are they?
I want to say like 3.5, 4 inches. They're little owls.
Oh, wow.
I know there's a picture of them.
How do you find an elf owl in the dark?
That's 3 or 4 inches.
Right. You know where they're nesting.
Oh,
So
okay.
you just wait for them in it dark. And so they were, the males.
I'm just picturing a lot of wandering.
Right. No, this was actually pretty easy. It was
Okay.
actually in a dude's backyard. He had this
Oh.
tree, and they would come in, and they were nesting in the tree. And then at night, the males would go grab grubs for the female.
Oh.
And so we just waited for them, And a lot of it's waiting. I mean, I've sat and waited for hours for a bird. There was one, I'll have to remember, I can't off the top of my head, but we were in Arizona again, and we hiked like 6 miles for this one bird and sat there for 4 hours. Once we got to this area, never found it. But we did see some, it's like some border patrol, like tactical border patrol dudes coming out of the mountains, because we were like 200 yards from the Mexico border.
Yeah.
And so we didn't see these birds, but here comes all these dudes in tack gear walking down, and we're like, whoa, where are we? They're like, well, Mexico's like on the other side of that tree. Don't go over there. Okay. Just because,
Good to know.
Just because you have these border crossings and stuff. I was like, okay, well, what if the bird's over there? Like, no. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So the one big bird in Arizona I wanted it's called an elegant Trogon. And it's a big bird that actually sounds like a howler monkey when it calls. And I actually got to see howler monkeys when I was in Belize earlier this year, and I was like, dude, that's exactly what the Trogon sounds like. And
Wow.
so when I was in Belize, I actually got 3 more species of Trogon. And so it's just amazing how it all kind of pulls itself together.
Do they migrate then from back and forth, or are they just to those areas? Are they the same species, but they're like, these guys stay down in this area, or a subspecies or something?
They're different species. So like the one in Arizona and in the southern part of Texas that we get up here is called the elegant Trogon, and it's red and gold and gray and green. And then Belize has like 4 species of Trogons, and I think I got 3. I got the black-headed Trogon, slaty-tailed Trogon, and one other one. And they're kind of specific to that area. But they're all part of the same species. And that's what makes it so cool. is that you can go all over and still get same species that are in the U.S.
Yeah.
I'm in Central America,
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, it's such a challenging, exciting micro world that we just basically overlook. You're outside in your yard like, oh, look, there's a bird.
Yeah. Like,
Well, look at it. It's yellow, when you start looking at it, or it's purple. Just the colors. I mean, it's amazing. It's so fun.
yeah. And that's the thing is it's like, I just feel like most of us were caught up in our lives and we don't stop to really think about what is that thing that just is passing through our yard. We
Right.
don't even think about it. Most of us don't. And there's fascinating things that are happening in the wildlife right around us. This actually reminds me, have you seen that movie, The Big Year?
Like 100,000 times. It drives my wife crazy. She's like, haven't you seen this movie 100 times? I'm like, yeah, so it's 101 now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, and the other one is Jeremiah Johnson. I don't know if you've ever seen that with Robert Redford.
Oh, of course.
It's it's based off of Vardis Fisher's Mountain Man and Liver Eating Johnson, the semi-autobiography or biography about him. I've seen that. I can word for word that movie. I could do the whole thing right now.
And that's
start to finish in order. I've seen it so many times.
So actually, that was in probably like 2009 or something. I want to say it was 2009-ish. I don't know. But we actually talked a lot about Liver Eating Johnson. And I actually read a couple of books around that period. There was a couple of books you actually even recommended to me, and I can't remember the names of them now. But
probably Vardis Fisher's Mountain Man.
That probably, there was one of them that it was kind of a very, not romantic as in, but a romanticized version of Jeremiah Johnson.
Yeah.
And that, if it's that one, I mean, he would get super descriptive about all the wildlife and all of the scenery and all of the everything, what I mean by romanticized. The writer was very descriptive about all that type of stuff. And that was a really good book. That was awesome. That was a good book. That one I need to find that one again. And then there was well, anyway, we did talk all about all that. And I think I actually read the other book on Liver Eating Johnson. Wasn't Jeremiah Johnson based loosely on, not based loosely, but somehow Liver Eating Johnson and Jeremiah Johnson.
Right. It's this. He's
same
guy.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that he was actually here in this area.
Yeah.
He was friends with Horace Countryman, kind of the guy who founded. He was one of the first settlers in the valley here. He helped him build the Countryman Hotel, which was actually west of town here. Where Eagle's Nest, old Eagle's Nest Ranch is. That's the area where they tried to put the town originally, and it kept flooding every year because it was actually on Countryman Creek side, across the river. And so Jeremiah Johnson helped him there. He would come through here when he was trapping and stuff like that on his way. He trapped in Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Idaho.
And I think in his later years, he was the sheriff of Red Lodge.
Yeah. So
I did my homework.
right. So he's like my mountain man hero.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of books, since we're on that subject, though, the other good one that I really enjoyed was the one, I think you turned me onto this one also. It was the guy out of Bozeman. He was about 18 years old. He actually met Horace Countryman also. And he left on a trapping trip. He wanted to be a mountain man. He left Bozeman with another guy who ended up being just a drunk mess. And then he ended up marrying Nez Perce woman who came through with being pursued by the U.S. military, and they were after Chief Joseph and all that stuff. Was that book? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I do.
That book was fascinating.
Man, I can see the cover of it, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
That is such a good book. I think about that book often. That's another one I was hoping to get the name of that one from you because I've tried to find it, and I've done I think his name was Andy Garcia.
Yes. Tough Trip Through Paradise.
Yes.
That's the book.
Yes.
Phenomenal book.
No, that's a great book.
Yeah.
And because that was interesting also because of so much. He comes right through this area, and then he kind of heads up north, and then he ends up, there was a lot of people that were left behind from Chief Joseph and his tribe were on the run heading north. And as they kept on getting attacked, they were losing people, and other tribes were actually picking up and taking care of some people. And that's where he met his wife.
Yep.
That was, and then I don't want to bust the end of that book, but I'm going to talk about the end of it. But it was super interesting because she went back to an old battlefield, took him to a battlefield, and said, "I got to go bury my brother," and so he went with her, and she told him what happened here, what happened at the battlefield, and there's now a monument there, and I want to go find this place, or I'm not sure where it is, this Nez Perce monument over this battlefield.
Is it like going towards like the Dillon area? Not Dillon, but like towards that area over there. Not
It
quite
could be.
Dillon, but like I think you go through like Whitehall because there's this battlefield out there. I've been to it actually, and there's a monument across the hill. But it's where I cannot remember exactly what town, but it's out in the kind of the middle
It could
of nowhere.
be, but because he goes there, she tells him what happened at that battle, and they find the remains of her brother and I think her dad, and they bury them, and he finds like a spear and some bows and some things like that, and she said at that time, she was like, they're going to need this in the next world, blah blah blah, and he stashed him in this spot. Well, as an old man, he goes back there, and now the place was an actual monument, and there's like park rangers, and at the end of that book, he goes there, and the rangers are like, "So this is what happened at this battlefield," and he stops them as an old man. He's like, "No, it didn't."
It's Big Hole National Battlefield. The
Okay.
Pierce. That's it. Yep, and it's near Dillon.
That
But-
sounds pretty
yeah.
familiar. And he goes and says, "No, that's not what happened." He goes, "This happened." And he says, "And I'm going to go down there and go get something." And they were like, "Okay." And they followed him. He went down. It took him a minute to look around, but he found in this, like where a big, huge bush had grown up, he actually found one of the spears. And these rangers were like, whoa. Like, and he's like, "I put this here. I'm taking it." And he took it, and they backed off, and they were like, "Okay, this old guy, he seems to know what he's talking about." And anyway, it was a fascinating end to that book. Ever since then, I've wanted to go to that battlefield and go see that, because he explains really what happened at that battlefield. Anyway, that was a great book you turned me on to, but it's so good because it ties in with all of the stuff that goes on in this area, the history of this area, and Horace Countryman and all of those guys. And anyway, so now I'm glad I remember. Now, Tough Trip Through Paradise.
Yep. Yeah, Andrew Garcia, Tough Trip Through Paradise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good one there. Hey, you know what? Before I get off the subject, though, of photography, I have your, I want to go through your Instagram, and you got a lot of great, I kind of feel bad because, like, we run our little business here in town, and I'm actually, I spend very little time on social media, and I don't see a lot of the things that goes on around me, which is honestly one of the reasons why we also did this podcast, because I thought, you know what, like, let's figure out, like, there's interesting people around us doing interesting things, and let's use this as an excuse to slow down, stop, and get to know what people are doing, and different artists in our area, and different go-getters and things like that. So I feel bad because I didn't even know that I spend very little time on Instagram, but you have an amazing Instagram.
Thank you.
You have got a lot of good stuff on there.
And I like Instagram. I'm not a big Facebook fan. I mean, I'm on there.
Yeah.
But, man, Instagram is awesome just because it's all pictures.
It's just photos. There's nothing, just some photos, nice
Yeah.
photos.
Thinking on that, the guy who started Instagram, or the guy who runs Instagram, though, did you hear about this? That he came out and he says, I think they're trying to compete with TikTok, and he's like, Instagram is not a photography or a photo-based app any longer. And he came out and he said this recently, and I saw actually a couple of people who are big on Instagram do reaction videos to him saying this.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, they're changing things. They're changing the algorithm. Watch this. Have you seen any major changes?
You know, I've seen to where, like, my reach isn't as big. I mean, I have like, what, 2,500 followers maybe. I mean, it's not like
That's Montana viral. That's huge for Montana.
Well, yeah, for Montana, but some of the guys that I follow and look up to, I mean, they're
Of
like
course.
100,000,
Right.
1.2 million,
Right.
I've noticed that some pictures that normally, like maybe 2 years ago, would have got 500 or 600 likes, maybe get 120, 130.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to base, I'm a competitive guy, and I try
Right.
not to base my passion off of likes. I mean, that's ridiculous, but
Right.
I get sucked into it. I'm like, really?
We all do.
Yeah,
and you're like, why didn't people like this, or why didn't or
Yeah.
whatever? But you just gotta put it out there. I feel, and share what you are passionate about, and I feel that keeps it more pure.
and,
sure.
And I do like it because it's pictures. People can only, they put a little bit of information there, and then it's the picture.
Yeah.
Whereas Facebook, you're reading everybody's opinion for days and days
Exactly.
and days, or like, why my bed hurt my back last night. I'm like, I really don't care. I mean, but I love Instagram just for that, and I've messed around on TikTok a little bit.
Yeah.
But man, come
TikTok
on.
is its own game.
Oh,
I've
man.
been studying TikTok for quite a while now because we want to get on there for our sauce and
Right.
start doing little things like that. But it is like,
Yeah, and there's
a lot to it.
There's an art to it.
Very
Like,
much so.
I've looked at it for a photography standpoint. There's a couple of photographers that I follow on there. I'm like, yeah, I could kind of get it.
the
But I start,
transitions and
Right.
oh yeah.
and then you start looking at it, and you're like, holy cow.
But TikTok is the #1 app
Yep.
in the whole world.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
you
And I
need
think
to get
for a
on there.
business and marketing standpoint, you'd be ridiculous not to get on there
Yeah.
now. And we're all too late. If you're not on there already, you're
Yeah.
too late. But
Yeah.
but it's just so hard to try to learn something that new and that. I mean, it's pretty complex to me. I mean, Instagram's easy. Post it, set the parameters on your picture, post it, type a few things, hashtag, you're done.
Yeah.
But yeah, so TikTok is, I feel like the old guy on TikTok because, it's all for like young kids and stuff like that. But if you want to market your business, that's where it's at right now.
And
Yeah.
the reels are
Yeah.
becoming a huge thing. Obviously, all over Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah.
all the reels are.
And so that's something
huge.
I'm learning on too, is trying to, I like a lot of behind the scenes stuff of when I'm out taking pictures. Is like, man, I should get a little video of this.
Yeah, because people would find that interesting.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I'm like, but that's kind of me. That's my personal time.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
it's a little bit of a battle, and it depends on how much I want to market my product, right? But for you guys, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna get real serious about that. We are late to the game. I've been watching this for years now, and like, I joined up when TikTok was Musical.ly because I follow this guy Gary Vaynerchuk, and I follow him religiously, or I do it from time to time. Sometimes it's hard to follow him because I feel guilty because I'm not doing everything that he says I should be doing, so I tune out so I don't have to face it. But back in the day, he was like on Musical.ly. He's like, get to know Musical.ly. This is going to be huge. It's just a bunch of little kids doing whatever, but that's all going to change. And this is where the attention is, blah, 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 blah. And then it got bought by TikTok, and it blew up to what it is today. And I feel bad because I've still never done anything on there, but we're definitely going to try to start creating content for that. We are late to that, but I don't know. At a certain point, I quit beating myself up, and I'm like, you know what? We can only do what we can do. And
Right.
We're two people trying to do it all.
Well, you guys are doing a damn good job. That's
Oh,
all
well,
I
thank
got to
you.
say. This is, like I said, this is amazing.
Well, thank you. So look at this. Look at that photo of this elk right here. Tell me about this elk right here on the top of this. We're actually in here, and this is an amazing shot. Where did you get this shot at? Give us the behind the scene of how you caught this bad boy.
So that's the Missouri Breaks. There's a section up there that's unhuntable. It's called Slippery Ann Wildlife Management Area, and it's kind of a refuge for the elk during the rut, which is archery season in Montana, to kind of get a reprieve. And so sometimes there's 100 head of elk there. Sometimes there's 400 head of elk there. It just kind of depends.
Wow.
This year was a really good year. I spent 3 days up there. I actually got to shoot with a couple of photographers that I really look up to and I follow and I visit with on Instagram, actually. And I got to shoot with them for a day and a half, and I learned a ton. But this was actually after dark. So this is what the new mirrorless cameras can do. The sun had set. I was using an 800 millimeter lens, the new one that came out with for the RF cameras. I have an R6. I wanted the R5 too, like everybody else, but my wife said no.
Oh,
so I got the R6. And I've been super.
And I don't know the difference. I don't even know the difference.
Right. So,
I did watch a couple of comparisons or something.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think the R5, the only real difference is like there was something more probably about video. Like you had more. Like, I want to say, if I know anything, that the R6 was maybe just a little bit toward photography based, but the R5 had a feature or something that was probably better for video or something. I don't even know.
So the big difference between the R5 and the R6 is that the R5, I believe, is more weatherproof.
Oh, okay.
For one. Which in wildlife photography is a big deal.
Yeah.
But I chance it. I'm like, it's raining. I'll put a sleeve on it. Oh, let's let it work.
Yeah.
The other thing is the R5 is 45 megapixel, where the R6 is 20. And this has been a big debate between Canon users because they're like, well, it's a brand new mirrorless camera. We should have more than 20 megapixels.
Yeah.
Well, I can't blow my picture up. The hell you can't. I've had billboards that I've had three billboards
Yeah.
done on pictures that people have purchased. And that one of them was on a T3i, which is
Wow.
18 or 20 megapixels on its own. I mean, it was a baseline Canon. So to say that 20 megapixels isn't enough, I think is a mute, especially today. So that's the big argument is that, well, more megapixels, I can crop more and have better quality when I crop, at 45 megapixels compared to 20. There's more information in 45 megapixels, obviously, than 20. But
with that 20, you're still really not that limited if you're.
No, I mean, I don't, for posting on social media and for selling a lot of my prints, I haven't seen an issue with 20 megapixels.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to know.
Yeah, I have a 70 Mark II still, the DSLR, 70 Mark II. I think it's got 22 megapixels, and that's where I've made most of my money is selling pictures is with that camera because I've had it.
Yeah.
So I didn't see an issue for me. I mean, I don't make a living yet on photography. It's my passion. It's my hobby. It's my de-stressor, so the 20 megapixels for me is great, and it's a super lightweight package. The other thing is storage on my computer. I mean, the 45 megapixel, the R5 takes a different memory card, like a CF Extreme Plus memory card.
Yeah, right.
And it takes so much data on your computer where the R6 takes SD cards. I mean, and I still buy high quality SD cards, but I can put so much more on my Mac than I can with the R5. Would I buy an R5 tomorrow if I had the money to go get it? Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Yep. But I don't need it right now.
Oh, no. No, you're doing phenomenal here with whatever you have.
And so this is where, because of the 20 megapixel, you can get a little bit better ISO out of it.
Okay.
And so this was shot, I think that elk was shot at 12,500 ISO.
Wow.
Which,
that's,
10 years ago,
that's high.
Was super grainy.
Yeah.
And so I shot that, and I shot that with the F11 800. I mean, so that's a pretty small aperture, so it's not letting in a whole lot of light.
So how far away were you on this?
I think that bull was probably 30 yards, 40 yards from
Oh, okay. So you're not you're not across the valley on this.
No.
You're just like.
So you can't get off the road at this area.
Okay.
I go off into the hills and go hiking around and seeing what I can find that's not right there in that area. But a lot of these elk come right up by the road. It's a pretty big spectacle. So the first few years I started going, maybe I see 15, 20 people. And it was mostly professional photographers trying to fill their portfolio for client stuff, getting elk pictures. I think this year on Saturday, there was over 240 cars.
Oh my God.
Man.
I mean, people setting up tables and eating dinner and watching these. And it's cool. It's a catch-22 because I think everybody should be able to enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I put these pictures up for people. Somebody in New York might never see an elk like this.
Yeah.
So they get to see them. And so when people go out there to see it, you can't get pissed off because they have every right to be there and they should be to experience it. But then for me, it's like, man, I want to be here alone,
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was like 30 yards from that elk. The sun had set. I mean, it was getting pretty dark, and I was able to get this elk. He was running towards a cow that's out of the shot. And I was able to snap 10 or 12 photos, rapid succession. And I think 10 of the 12 were actually in focus and usable. And then there's not a whole lot of post-processing on this, actually.
Wow.
There's I picked up the highlights a little bit so you could see the contrast between the color of his hide, the chest that's dark and the rest of them that's not. And then I ran it through a denoise program to clear up what little bit of noise there was, and that's the end result.
Oh, that's amazing. It's amazing to hear that was shot after sunset. Sun's already gone down. It was getting pretty dark.
Oh yeah, it was pretty dark.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty crazy. Let's go into this. Where you said earlier, we were talking earlier. You told me you hiked in, I want to say 14 miles round trip to get this shot.
Yep. Well, there's a bunch in my feed, but I spent like 2 hours at these falls. It's just a little creek. I don't know what they say in the South. Creek. Well, it's a creek up here.
Yeah.
But so it's a 7-mile hike one way, and if it's after June or July, there's no water coming out of that little waterfall. It's pretty minimal. So I went in early June, and I spent 3 hours there, and it's in this deep little canyon, and so the light's kind of not great, and then you get moments of good light, moments of bad light. But yeah, it's a 14-mile round trip to take pictures of waterfall and a little stream.
Wow. That's an ideal little spot.
And it's perfect.
Looks like Ireland or Iceland or something.
Go camping.
And it's an hour drive less than an hour drive from here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
So.
Wow. I'm going to have to get some coordinates from you or something here.
Right. I'll just take you there. I'll go back.
Right on. That's one good thing. It's like, these aren't like secret hunting spots that people won't share with you because they don't want to share hunting spots because you're going to go take something from them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these things, you can share because there's nothing to take from, it's like you're not going to ruin the hunting spot. Anybody can go back there and experience that.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So we were talking about the birds. I'm digging this. What is this little guy right here?
That's the one I told you about earlier. That's the common redpoll.
Oh,
That's
no,
actually
at your house?
out of my window. So I have bird feeders set up to where I can open my window and spend like 3 hours just sitting there, and I'm like just the perfect distance, the perfect height away from the feeders and the
nice.
perches to get pictures like that of the birds.
That's
Do you
a
leave
great
like
photo.
anything like a tripod set up for any of that, or do you just
Sometimes.
run and gun it?
Sometimes I'll sit up there with the tripod. But a lot of that with the R6 and that 800 is all handheld. That picture that I took of the elk was on a tripod, but that's a handheld picture of the bird. And that's just, I'll spend an hour a day just looking out the window, seeing what shows up. I think I've recorded close to 70 species in my yard here in town.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Huh. Not that it's any of my business, but how much do you spend on a tripod?
Me? So
Because I watch review videos constantly, and I like, as you can see, I'm buying tripods, and I have different tripods, and I have whatever. But it fascinates me because I'm like, there's like, all of a sudden there's like insane money that people can spend on a tripod, and I'm like, I don't. But there is sometimes you get what you pay for, but sometimes something is just good enough. So when you said something was on a tripod, it made me curious. What's good enough for you at this point?
At this point, because I do a lot of hiking and a lot of backcountry photography places, and I guess the reason, I'll tell you how much in a second, but last year there was 1.7 trillion photos taken in the world. 1.7 trillion. How do you stand out with 1.7 trillion photos? At any given time, you or I are going to have close to 630 pictures on our phones.
Yeah.
That's just, and that's loose statistics. I mean, I'm sure this year it's even close to over 2 trillion pictures, but
yeah.
So I do a lot of backcountry photography, a lot of hiking, a lot of hiking in the park and stuff like that. So I want a really good tripod that's not heavy. So I'm all carbon fiber. I've got a carbon fiber tripod, carbon fiber heads. I think my tripod was $600, $700.
Oh, wow.
My head, my gimbal.
Yeah, because it needs to be lightweight. It's got to be able to take a little bit of a beating out there.
Right. And it's got to be able, before the mirrorless setup, I mean, my 150 to 600 and my 7D Mark II, it's a pretty heavy unit. I got to be able to hold the weight, 25, 30 pounds. So I've got carbon fiber heads. I've got carbon fiber gimbals, my carbon fiber tripods. I think I have 2 carbon fiber tripods, a small little travel one and a great big one.
I'm nowhere close to that.
We have a ton of tripods.
We have a ton of tripods.
We have a big collection.
Right.
I have a lot of tripods, but they're all cheapos.
But
no, I wonder someday. I mean, we all want nice gear, and we're just not at that level, but we'll get there. But sometimes having the right gear keeps you motivated also. Like having good stuff. I don't have to have the best stuff, but I do want stuff that I feel good about it, and it's quality, and it's got some craftsmanship to it, and it serves a good purpose. So it's important.
Yeah, and no matter how good your gear is, I mean, you want good gear to make you feel, like you said, make you feel good. But at the end of the day, it's all about me.
Yeah.
And my skill level, and all the most expensive gear in the world is not going to make my skill level that much better. It's repetition, practice, getting there. But the gear makes you feel good to where you
want to do it.
You want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you put a entry level camera in really experienced guy's hands, he's going to still get good photos. Yeah. You're not going to be able to tell the difference, really, I bet. The most for the untrained eye, I guess. But no, very true. This fox right here, look at this guy. You're over in Yellowstone National Park. I see that you have that tagged over there. What is that like shooting over there in Yellowstone?
I love it. The winter, especially. I love it. And so if you read the caption on that one, that's like 2015, maybe?
2016.
And I think it's a terrible photo. I do. But I put it up there because I want to see where I've improved.
I don't see what you're seeing as far as it being a terrible photo.
To me, it's flat, for one. You can't really see any detail in the snow. It's just a washed out white background, right? The fox is kind of muted, where to our naked eye, you're going to see a little bit more contrast on him. And he's going to the viewer's right, and there's not a whole bunch of open space there.
I see, as far as the leading.
As far as composition and stuff goes. So to me, that's not a super great photo.
At the time, though, were you pretty excited about that photo?
Oh, yeah. I've sold I've sold some of those,
Yeah.
and I was super ecstatic about it. But looking, it's almost 2022. I see where I could improve on it, and that's why I keep a lot of those old ones. Like,
Yeah.
that was good for me back then.
Yeah.
But I can do so much better now, and I think that's what I talked about in that little caption under that one. But yeah, so for me personally, because I'm a perfectionist, and that's the worst thing to be as a photographer.
Right.
Oh,
for sure. No, I think it's to me, I guess it's what you're looking for in a photo, though. Like, I know what you're saying about being flat or washed out or anything, but also to me that shows the barrenness out there of just the expanse,
the simplicity,
that this is this thing in focused in on here. The focus is all here on this.
Right.
There's nothing distracting from that, but it's also showing just how barren it is out there.
Yeah, and there's other fox pictures that I have that show the same thing. That's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good photo.
Let's see here. Was this guy from from the Missouri Breaks?
Yep, that's from the breaks.
That wasn't the same guy from the.
It might be. So if you look at his brow tine on it'd be the viewer's left. It's straight.
I see it.
And so I guess they've anthropomorphized him, and they call him Sword.
Oh, really?
And I don't like whatever that word is.
Yeah.
Animals. To me, it's just for me personally. A lot of people have it. Like, they name the wolves in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
They give them human characteristics. They're animals.
Yeah.
Let them be animals. They're not people.
Yeah. I know.
But that's personal. That's kind of just a personal thing for me.
I guess I haven't thought about it a whole ton, but I know what you're saying about that, because you'll hear about, I don't know, some gorilla dies and they give them some name. People like to get attached in that way or something. They like to. I don't know. I don't. Yeah. I'm not on that same bandwagon there.
Right. And I'll probably take some heat for that if from other photographers or animal lovers. Like, they name all the grizzly bears in Yellowstone strawberry, raspberry. That's cool, but they're bears. They're not people. And to kind of put that, I mean, they're going to die eventually.
I think it takes the wildness out of them.
It does.
They're not pets.
Exactly.
That's
they're
what it
not
is.
your pet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I understand why people do it. I really do. But for me personally, I want to keep them wild. I want to keep them. They're a grizzly bear.
That's the attraction to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just my little rant.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I'm right there with you on that. This little guy right here. Where did you shoot this one at?
My front yard.
This was in your front yard?
Yeah. So I've got another perch set up in a lilac bush that when the sun sets, it hits that perch about 45 minutes before sun goes down and gives it some really good light.
So I'm like picturing, man, where did he tromp to go get this shot right here?
In
And I'm
his
like,
yard.
what work he had to do to get out there,
Yeah.
And you're like, my front yard.
That's my front yard.
You know what? But that really shows like what a hobby it is. You know what I mean? Like, you can get stuff that is very good looking stuff without having to go far.
Yeah.
If you have the right eye for it. Did you put that perch there?
Yep.
Did you set that up?
Yeah. So I spent I've had it up there for about a year and a half, but I spent a week just watching the sunset, and seeing where it would go. And then I did it 3 months later and saw how the sun was hitting that area on that bush. And 3 months later doing it again. I put some work into this, and I didn't want to put like a dowel or something there that made it look super man-made.
Right.
So I cleared away a few branches. I found a piece of bark off a cottonwood tree down at the river. I brought it up here, and it's been sitting there. And there's a couple more pictures of some common redpolls that are on there that are pretty cool too. And it's just the light hits it just right in the evening for some good photos.
That's awesome. Makes me want to put up our bird houses and then set up a tripod and leave a camera there. So like, I don't have to put a bunch of work into it. That's my other thing. Or like in the moment, I don't want to have to like go set up a bunch of stuff.
Right.
I just want to go shoot it, and have it ready. But that's what's also kind of fun about going through these photos with you, because I was going through these earlier and I'm like, I bet you each one of these has a interesting story. That's the fun side of it. People post things and you are limited by what's in a caption. But it's fun to go through this stuff and be like, wow, what is the story behind that? I find that part of it interesting. I want to just go through a couple more here that I was looking at earlier. Where did you get this guy right here at?
That's a Yellowstone park.
Really?
Yeah. And that one, so I have there's a bunch, and I think that was 2019 or 2020. I went to the park one day specifically for bighorn sheep. I went on a couple of different hikes just to look for rams. It was right after the heavy rut, and so they were still sparring, they were still fighting, still butting heads, just not as often. And there wasn't a whole bunch of ewes around. And so I was looking specifically for a little bachelor group of rams that maybe had some ewes off to the side. I went on a bunch of hikes. I couldn't find it. Drove down the road, peeked over this little area that I know there's sheep in along the Yellowstone River, and there they were. Nobody showed up. I was there for 3 hours with these rams, and I was alone. And I got some pretty decent shots out of it. But yeah, that's in Yellowstone, and I mean these sheep could care less that I was there. You know,
Wow.
It's not like I'm intrusive.
How far away were you with this guy?
25, 30 yards, maybe.
Wow. This looks like National Geographic, man. You're shooting National Geographic stuff right here.
I appreciate that.
I think it looks
Yeah.
great.
Thanks.
I'm super pumped
Thanks.
about it. Look at this guy right here. What's this guy? Well, so this one says Blacktail Plateau, Yellowstone, Wyoming, right here.
Yeah.
How far away are you on a shot like this? Because I'm always picturing these huge, massive lenses. You're in really close to these things.
That one was probably about 60 yards, 70
Okay.
yards. There was a bachelor herd of about 12 bulls, and that was cold. That trip, it was probably 15, 20 below is the warmest it got.
Wow.
And so they were out in the sun, I'm guessing just sunning themselves, and you just get some behavior here. He was yawning a lot, obviously
Yeah.
trying to survive the winter. I mean, it's brutal, and they just get done with the rut, so their fat stores are depleted. I mean, he looks pretty ragged if you see a whole body picture of him, but
Yeah.
just the behaviors of him yawning and chewing his cud and stuff like that, you get some really cool pictures like that. And I mean, a lot of people, I think, just kind of look at the elk, they drive by, they're like, cool, snap a few shots with their cell phone, and that's it.
Right.
Bucket list checked.
Yeah.
Spend 2 or 3 hours with them, watch them. It's cool.
Yeah.
And you get some of these pictures like this.
Yeah. It's motivating me to take some actual real cameras over there and get some shots, because a lot of this stuff you're not having to go hike 3 days in.
No.
You're just
and,
putting that time in.
Maybe I told him a joke and he's laughing at it. Maybe he thinks I'm funny. I don't know.
That's I know that's when you can post and be like, caption this
Right.
for sure. Was this group right here? Was that in that with that other?
Yeah, and I mean that one got a ton of likes, and I was surprised. It's just 3 rams standing looking at each other.
But do you realize though, like, this is not in most people's lives out there. Like, this is not this type of thing. This is National Geographic. This might as well be on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Most people are not going to drive 2-3 hours to even go try and capture something like this. That they could, but it's so foreign. I can see that people would like it, because this is not what somebody would typically see, because they're not going to go out there and go find it. They're not going to go.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess and maybe it's because I take it for granted. I mean, you're right. We live so close to
We've
Yellowstone.
grown up with it,
Right.
right outside of Nye. There's
Yeah.
bighorn sheep everywhere, so we see them all the time. So it's just like seeing, there's a deer. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal.
I can tell you, I grew up in southern Nevada. When I moved up here in 2007, the things we started to see around here, so much of what is going on around here is so taken for granted. I can't tell you how excited we were, my kids were, the first time we saw a bald eagle just flying over Columbus. How many times do you see those now, and you're like, you don't see those in other parts of the country a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So we just take those things for granted. I was a good year or two that I was like, deer, we're doing that forever, right?
Yeah.
Times we're driving along and just rolling the windows down, and me telling my kids, don't ever forget this smell. I can't smell it.
Yeah.
I can't smell it. And that really kind of bothers me that I can't smell it. When I first moved up here, I could stop and just smell it for the first year or two. Just the smell up here was so sweet and good compared to, I don't know, the desert has its own thing when it rains down there, and it has whatever. But so many things that living up here now, I'm like, wow, I just take all this for granted. And a lot of it I notice that I do, but this is why I say this is not everybody's everyday thing.
And I get that, I guess, but you're right. I do take some of it for granted. I mean, because like I said, I go to the park a dozen times a year at least, and I'm like, it's 3 pictures of 3 rams. I think I called it the boys.
Yeah,
they're just hanging out. I picture like you, me, and somebody else, maybe even April. We're just hanging out, having a beer, sitting outside, watching the sun, or something like that. And that's kind of what that picture reminded me of. So it was kind of a cool picture.
Yeah. Dude, you have a lot of cool pictures on here. It's I don't know, it's motivating to me, because I really do want to get more into photography, and I want to find the time to get out there and get these kinds of shots.
Yeah, like, see, there's 2 of them, 2 of the 3. So the third ram was off of the frame, just watching these 2, and they would go at it for an hour.
Oh man, was that just loud? Those
Yes.
things cracking together.
The sound. And I think that is something that, and I'm learning how to take video. I mean, it's kind of a whole new world to me to take video with all my camera gear, and that's that's where people are making their money now, is the video. I mean, like I said, there's 1.7 trillion photos taken last year. How did to stand out? You got to be pretty damn good. Video is a big deal, especially in the wildlife realm. I mean, watch Planet Earth.
Yeah.
Watch any of that BBC stuff. I mean, the video is phenomenal, but to hear that is there's no other sound like it in the world that I know of, with sheep. I mean, if it's bighorn sheep, Dall sheep, Argali sheep, the ibex, the sound of those horns hitting each other.
Yeah.
Just is so cool. I mean, I was close enough you could feel it. You could feel it in your feet, you could feel it in your chest. I was just like, dude, the moment.
What of an experience.
Yeah. And for me, every time I see that picture, that's what I'm gonna think of.
Yeah.
It's just it is so cool. And that's why I do it, I mean, if I don't sell another picture the rest of my life, so be it.
Yeah.
But I get that experience.
Yeah.
And when I'm old and decrepit and can't move around, when I'm 95 and I'm crawling out of my yard to take pictures of birds and I see that picture from 2019, I'm like, dude, remember that day?
Yeah.
Or I get to tell my grandkids about it, so it'll be cool.
Well, the neat thing also about documenting all of this and having a hobby like this, that you get to document all this. So now when you're older and you're sitting around the fire and, you get to scroll through these and talk about all these experiences. You always have that, this
Right.
visual memory or how it's captured like that. That's also why I don't know, it's documenting. My parents actually they were actually written their life stories. This is kind of off the subject, I guess, but kind of in the same way. They actually wrote out their life stories, and it's to have that. But now that I have this all set up this year, they've been spending the winters down in southern Nevada, and then they come back up here and they live right across from me, and they spend half the year up here. But it's going to be this. I want to go back through their life stories and actually just have them. We'll read it, but we'll stop and talk about it and document that and have that. I can understand why things are going toward video. There's still an art in the photography side of it,
Right.
But that documenting things with video and giving that that you're right there feeling. There's something for that. So, well, you have a lot of great shots in here. Earlier. Let me see here. I think I still have your. Let's see here. I'm gonna go into your website right here.
Okay.
Let me see here. ChasingTheWildOutdoors.zenfolio.com, correct?
Correct.
And now it's like taking forever to see. That was my thing earlier. I was like, certain things were loading, and there they are. Okay. And I think I was in a subcategory here of birds of Montana, correct?
Yeah. So the portfolio has different categories: Montana, Texas, Arizona, Oregon birds, and then landscapes, and then elk, deer, moose, bear.
Are these in chronological order then, or did you like as these are numbered? Are they also chronologically in order?
Not entirely. A lot of it's alphabetical because I'm kind of OCD that way.
Yeah,
So-
I hear you.
But so those bald eagle pictures right there were actually taken in between here and Absaroka one afternoon, and I think I took those 4 or 5 years ago.
That's my point.
That's
my point. You don't get to see that in
Yeah.
a lot of places.
Yeah.
That's just on your drive between, Columbus and Absaroka.
It's going down to Absaroka. It might have even been during hunting season, and I was like, we're not going hunting. We're taking pictures.
Yeah.
So those blackback woodpeckers, those two right there. So those were in eastern Montana, actually during hunting season,
And they're the ones right below the eagles.
yeah.
Okay.
And they're actually not super common in eastern Montana, especially. And so to see those, and that was over by Broadus, and they were actually right in our camp. And I mean, when we talk about elk camp, we still do the wall tents, the whole 9 yards. We're out there for 10, 12 days. And even if you don't get an elk, who cares? But we're camping. And I woke up one morning. I didn't go out that morning. I think it was like day 10 or day 11. And I'm just like, I'm beat. I just want to relax for the morning. I'll cook breakfast for all the guys that come back. I looked out, and here's this black-backed woodpecker. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. And so I grabbed, my camera gear's always with me. And I got pictures of those. And I haven't seen another one since. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
Over there. So
Yeah. What is this guy right here with the, I'm terrible with colors, by the way. He's right below the feeder.
that's a black-headed grosbeak. That's in my yard.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, they're here in town. You see them during the spring. They migrate. Actually, I think I've even got some that aren't on there that they're here in the winter. Some of them stick around year-round.
That's incredible. The guy right below that with the thing in his beak there. Is
That's
that also right here?
Yeah, that's a blue jay. That's in my yard. So that one, they were coming into the feeder, and I just went outside, laid down in the grass, and waited for him to show up and snag a peanut off the ground.
Wow.
So here I am. So people are driving by. There's this crazy dude laying in his yard and with camera gear.
That's great. I love it.
Well, like I say, it's a fascinating hobby because you don't have to go very far if you're creative and you're willing to put in the time.
So there's that one in the tree that's kind of in that hole right there. That's actually at the courthouse. In one of the trees at the courthouse. That's a brown creeper.
Oh.
Wow, that's a great shot.
Yeah, so that was in the yard. I was actually I had to go to work for something, and I parked and I could hear it and I couldn't see it. And I'm like, I know that's a creeper. I just can't see it. And it showed up at the tree right there. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I went and got my camera and went back to the courthouse and took a few pictures of it.
Have you gotten any pictures of the owls that hang down at Itch?
No.
No, I used to walk that a lot, and there would be the adult owls, and then there was like 3 babies I'd seen at nighttime going down there.
Owls are my nemesis.
Really?
Oh, I
love owls.
Like there's some owls right there. I think those are out in between here and Rappeljay. But yeah, owls for me are tough. I don't know why. It's just like
hard to find.
Well, they're nocturnal for one.
Yeah. Some of them are hard to find, but they're like, you know what? You're Cole and you have a camera and I don't like you type of thing. It's just kind of that nemesis. So it's a fun challenge to go out and try to get them.
Yeah.
There's some I'm one of the species that I really want is a great gray owl. And I can't get one to save. I can go to a place where somebody saw one that day before. Not this guy.
I had an owl, snow owl, the white ones,
I
believe, came home from vacation and when I lived in town, and it was on my front porch and it had been injured or something. So we had to call the wildlife people, and they had to come out and get it. Well, they ended up not coming. They said you could dispose of it because it eventually died, but we couldn't touch it. So it was like dead on the porch for a while. Yeah, but it was that's the first time I'd ever seen one.
Yeah, so snowy owls usually don't come this far south.
Oh.
So for it to be here was a big deal. I think 2 years ago there was one over by Laurel. But northern Montana, they get them pretty regularly. And there's people posting pictures of them right now. And so I'm trying to figure out a weekend where I can
Those are magnificent.
Where I can go up to like Malta or that area and try to get some.
Yeah,
some
it was
owl
really
pictures.
weird. Yeah, it just came home from vacation. It was on their front porch. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
That was neat.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of great shots of these guys right in here. And most of these, would you say most of these are probably just in your front yard then?
Probably a third of them, those are all from the yard. Those are all common red poles over the last couple of years.
Now I'm pumped. We're going to set up a tripod and
those little red pole, they're pretty birds. They're really pretty.
They're super. And those are the ones I was telling you about earlier that they spend most of their time up in the tundra.
Okay, and then they migrate down here.
They migrate down here in the winter. And not every year. It just has to be the right temperature for them to come this far. Like last year I didn't have any. This year I've had, like I said, I've had for about a week and a half now, I've had about 30 of them in the yard.
Wow. Going through these, I was looking at these earlier, these Montana landscapes you have. These are just some really beautiful shots in here. And this is also stuff that I feel like most people around here take for granted. There's beautiful things. And I mean, you really bring out the good color in a lot of these shots and the composition is great, but these are things that we all just drive by all the time. A lot of these are things we just all drive by. We don't ever think about how beautiful they really are. But this really captures it. A lot of these I love the old structures too, the old barns. I used to inspect track up on the High Line for BNSF and all the granaries and all the things up there in those beautiful sunsets. I wish I'd had a good camera back then. Even now I stop with my phone and I take shots of sunsets and everything. But there's a lot of just really neat things that are on right here in these areas that we kind of take for granted, but there is a beauty in them. This red barn right here, where's that guy at?
Big Fork.
Is that?
Yeah. I went up there for a Spartan race.
Oh, really?
To Big Fork, yeah. And ran the Spartan race and then took a couple extra days just to go take pictures around the area.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's just a neat shot right there.
Yeah.
And then, so you were telling us earlier you actually got some billboards going around town here. People are purchasing these from you.
Yep.
And you're blowing them up on the billboards.
Not me, whoever they.
Well, whoever they
right.
get.
Yeah, so I've had 3 billboards. People have purchased my photos, and then they ended up being billboards. One was actually for tourism for Southeast Montana, and it was a huge billboard outside of Rapid City, South Dakota.
Oh, wow.
And so I worked with the company that does all the marketing for Southeast Montana tourism, and they purchased one of my, I think it was a Medicine Rocks photo. I think it was a sunset Medicine Rocks photo, and it was a billboard for a year and a half over in Rapid City. And then this year I've had 2 photos that are on billboards that are for Floberg, Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're selling Montana. We don't want more people here, but no.
Right.
No. But I mean, it's cool. You know, I get to drive by them every day. One's in Absaroka and one's over by Park City.
That's
so.
Yeah, and now I'm curious because now I want to start looking for them. You were telling me about the one in Absaroka. I'm going to look for that one the next time I go through there.
Yeah.
This is the common site that I was used to. I could have been shooting these all day, every day.
Yeah, and that's in the small little town called Brockway.
Really?
Yeah, it's north of, in between Terry, Montana, and Circle, Montana.
Okay. I know where Terry is.
Yeah, so it's north. It's about 28 miles north of Terry. Little itty bitty town.
It's sad that they're tearing these all down all over the place.
I know. I wish I would have had pictures of the one here before they tore it down, but it didn't happen.
The Carlisle school. Who would have thought when those kids were going to school there that they're like, hey, this place is going to be a neat place to come out and shoot someday.
So that one, I never knew that existed. I was over in Webo at Beaver Creek Brewing, having a beer that turned into 3. But the bartenders, like, I told them I was a photographer, and I ended up taking pictures indoor of their brewery setup, and they used them and stuff like that in their advertising. Wow. And I did it for free. I was like, yeah, this is cool. You know, I mean, it's not my forte, and they really liked it. The bar was empty. Then I took a bunch of pictures of the interior and stuff like that. Really, if you're into microbrews, it's a really nice place in Webo, Montana, of all places. But the bartender's like, have you heard of Carlisle? I'm like, no, never heard of it. She's like, it's this little ghost town that has a school and a couple of other buildings, and it's on this backcountry road. Like, she gave me directions, and I went out there and just started snapping pictures of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And there's like little places like that all over Montana.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. I'm looking at all your like waterfall shots, and this is something that I have also been thinking about. That's funny because I've been thinking about this, of doing this with what is the setting that makes it so that water looks like it's flowing like that? Is it just your aperture or your
No.
No, it's your
that one.
It's your shutter speed.
Shutter speed, but then if they're, you have to have a filter. A lot of times that a neutral density filter that makes the whole thing look darker, so you can slow your shutter speed down, let more light in, and it slows the water down.
It just looks like it's foggy, just really smooth, and
yeah,
I love it.
So you buy neutral density filters, and there's different stops. So like if your exposure set at 0, you put a 6-stop neutral density filter on, so you're shooting 6 stops underexposed. So it's going to let more light in, and it's going to slow everything down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, see.
Yeah, I do a lot of those. I like them. I think they're really pretty.
Yeah, they are. They're gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did some of Multnomah Falls on my last Oregon trip, and COVID helped me because I got pictures of the bridge and the waterfalls.
Nobody
no
there.
people.
That's
no
awesome.
people. And so that was cool because it's hard to find pictures.
That'll never happen again.
Of no people at Multnomah Falls, one of the most popular waterfalls in the world. And I was there in April, and because of COVID, there was very few people there. There are like a dozen people there. You just wait till they all get off the bridge and take your pictures. But I did a lot of neutral density filter pictures with those.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. I went over to Iceland in 2017 with my son Andre, and we went over there, and we're driving around the country, and you're going to all these spots and all those famous like waterfalls and different places, but there are so many people, and the tourism over there was just going crazy. They were getting like, I think there's 300,000 people in Iceland, but there's like 3 million visitors per year on this tiny little island, and so there's people everywhere, buses at every bus, just busloads of people, and you're sitting there and we're trying to get a nice shot of a waterfall, and there's like a drone in every shot. There's somebody's drone in every shot at every waterfall that we're at, and it was just, that part was frustrating. It would be, I wonder what it would have been like to be over there in Iceland during COVID, so you can get some of those,
And the nice thing with editing programs these days is you can edit a lot of that out.
take that out.
It just
yeah.
takes a lot of time,
Yeah.
But yeah, to see Multnomah Falls with no people was pretty cool. I went to Belize in March of this year. Yeah, I think it was in March. We went to Belize on vacation. I spent an extra 3 days there after everybody left for photography. Got to go to a couple of different Mayan ruin sites. No people.
Really?
Yeah, so we went to this. Yeah, and of course they're not updated on the website yet because I'm behind.
That's where I was going. I was
Right.
like, "Whoa."
No,
that would be so
yeah,
neat.
somewhere on my Instagram there might be a few, but yeah. So I love taking all the pictures and stuff like that. But man, to spend hours and hours putting them on, in the portfolios, it's like I just want to go take pictures. But yeah, so I'm working on the Belize ones now. But we're at this site called Altunha, and it's not very far out of Belize City. It's usually packed with people, and we were the only ones there. So I got pictures of this excavated Mayan ruin site with no people in it, for hours and hours. And then some of the places I went for bird photography in Belize, same thing. They opened the lodge for me and my guide.
Oh,
We were the
wow.
only ones there. And then we were in a bunch of unexcavated Mayan ruin sites, that are just overgrown in the jungle. That was cool. My first big trip to the jungle was just amazing. The history there, I mean, I haven't even touched the tip of the history of
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
And not many people have. I mean, and now they're finding that what we've all been taught about the history down there is like
not
not all that accurate.
Yeah, we just watched a movie.
Have you seen that movie? What is that movie called?
It's an Amazon one they did about
The Lost City of Z.
Yes.
Isn't that a good movie?
That is so good. I just watched that yesterday and I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
What an amazing experience. Although I'm like, oh, the bugs and all that would kind of like, that'd be hard. But like just to have that adventure and to see, yeah.
Well, and then like Central and South America, there's still places that are basically frontier that nobody's been to.
No. Yeah.
2022 in a couple of days.
Yeah.
And there's still places like that. Could you imagine just, I'm going to go explore this.
Yeah. Yeah. It made me just like, oh, we need a trip. That's what I made.
But now what they're finding out is like they're, the claims of the early explorers that, there was massive cities when they first went there. 50 years later, other people came through and there was nothing. And they said, oh, these guys were just blowing this all out of proportion. We'll come to find out now with like LiDAR technology and all these things. They're mapping out massive areas underneath the
roads,
underneath
monuments.
the jungle that they're finding massive, evidence of civilizations there with highways. It's super, super...
interesting,
Yeah, just on a big scale. I don't know, stuff that they just didn't even think was possible.
Right. And so like where I was taking pictures in the jungle was mostly unexcavated. There was a college, I think Texas A&M went down there and did some excavation, and then they ended up closing it back up because the country, Belize, didn't want to make it a tourist attraction or whatever. But like they were there like in the 90s, and it was all overgrown. So in less than 20 years, or just over 20 years, it was completely covered. So I can totally understand where with this LiDAR and stuff like that, they're seeing these whole basic, huge city-states that we didn't know existed because you can't see them in the canopy. There's pictures, I might have some on Instagram too, where I'm taking pictures. It just looks like a hill in the jungle, and it's an actual temple.
Wow.
It just...
Yeah. Well, and that's what they're saying now too, is like so many things that they just walked past.
Yeah.
That they just didn't even notice. When they go back and they look at it with LiDAR, that like, oh no, this is all symmetrically laid out and you can see it all there.
Yeah.
And then come to find out, I don't know, sometimes Graham Hancock is considered controversial, but I love watching anything that he talks about. Are you familiar with Graham Hancock?
A little bit.
Because he goes into the soil down there, that the soil was actually like engineered.
Yeah.
And he says that soil was not native there, that they through their own technologies, they bioengineered the soil down there, and that's what helped to produce this just overgrowth of jungle, that wasn't actually native to there. And that, anyway, I've watched a lot of stuff on his and got a couple of his books and everything, and he goes way into that. I don't even have the vocabulary to repeat what he says, but I find that super fascinating that they're having to rethink what they've thought about those areas, and that because so much of that got covered up by the jungle, but so much of that jungle is there because of what they knew about agriculture, and they hopped up the soil and created a super soil that fed that jungle that helped cover up that they were even there.
Yeah.
That's
And, then that's a good segue as far as like my photography. I mean, I'm a history buff. I went to college. I wanted to be a history professor is what I wanted to do when I got out of high school, and went to the military, came out. It's like, I'm going to be a teacher. I didn't like that, but I still love history.
Oh,
And
me too.
now that I'm even more and more involved, I mean, I've always been a history nerd. I mean, I love reading history books about everything, but my photography has just expounded that because every place I go has history.
yeah.
Like going over to Medicine Rocks in southeastern Montana. The Indians and the Native Americans use that for all
That's outside of
sorts
Baker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
been there.
I mean, just you read about the history there and the farming and ranching, and then looking at it from a photography standpoint, you go north of Terry, and there's this photographer, this female from Britain, that gave up this cush life in Britain to come to the United States. She ended up in Montana, Evelyn Cameron.
Okay.
Don't know if you know who she is,
I do.
but I've actually stood on the rocks that she took pictures on.
Wow.
I went over there. I took a bunch of pictures, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So I started reading about her and the stuff that she went through as a female in the late 1800s, and a photographer at that. And the stuff that she captured is just like mind blowing, And
Interesting.
but everywhere I go, no matter where it is to take pictures, there's all this history involved, and I'm just like eating it up. I'm just like I know a lot about a little, or I know a little about a lot, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, just like I crave it. And then you get stuff like Dan Carlin, Hardcore History. We talked about that the other day.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this guy's amazing,
Yeah.
to research that. And then, so I use my photography not only for that kind of stress relief, but to learn. I mean, I crave learning still at age 40. I mean,
Yeah.
and the history of all these places I get to go to. And I'm going to Nepal in October. And I've been fascinated with Nepalese people, that culture,
Oh, that
the Himalayas,
so
Himalaya
great.
mountains. And so I can't wait for that trip. And it's October. I got to wait for October, but it's
Yeah.
How did
my
that-
But then
um,
you look forward to that.
Yeah.
It gives you something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So how did that trip come about? So you mentioned that a couple of days ago to me, and I've been wanting to ask you about that. How did that trip come about? And then, so you do have it scheduled. You're going to go
going in October.
You're going to go do Everest in October.
Yeah. It's base camp. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not climbing to the top. I don't have $80,000.
That's what I
Well,
was I'm
yeah.
like, wow, he's been saving his
Yeah.
dollars, or he's
No.
got
This must have been
something, because
good
I
long
know it's
dream.
expensive.
Right. Yeah, it's like $80,000 minimum anymore
Wow.
to climb Everest, and it's a super highway. There's so many people that do Everest every year. They say
Oh.
that 30,000 people make it to base camp every year now.
Wow,
I know.
that's
And-
crazy.
It's crazy. But so the whole came about is right after high school, I was having a conversation with my parents. It was right before I got shipped out to Germany, and my parents and I were talking, and they're like, "Well, what is a goal that you have 20 years from now?" Because I was 18, 19 years old. What is one of your goals? And I said, I want to go to Everest. I want to see the Himalaya when I'm 40. I want to
Yeah.
do that for my 40th birthday present. And it's just kind of stuck with me. And when I was dating my wife, I met her in Oklahoma when I was stationed down there, and brought her to Montana. She's never going back anywhere else. She loves Montana. But I told her when we were dating on one of our conversations that when I'm 40, I'm going to Nepal. I want to go see Mount Everest. I want to see Lhotse. I want to see the Nepalese people, that whole culture. That's just
Yeah.
fascinating to me. And so it just kind of always been in the back of my mind. And as I got closer and closer to 40, it just started, I started researching it, and it came to fruition. And yeah, so I go in October.
Wow, that's
Are you going by yourself? Is your wife going with
No, it's a trip I want to do by myself.
you? Nice.
It's just me. I'm using a Nepalese guide. I'm a big proponent of using making the countries, giving them their money. There's a lot of European companies, American companies that do trips that are, kind of cush, and I
Yeah.
don't want that. I want raw. I want cultural. I want real. And so I'm using a Nepalese guide.
That's awesome.
I'll do a 16-day trek, and it's pretty standard. Everest Base Camp trek is 16 days. You can do longer, you can do shorter, and then I'll go back to Kathmandu for a day, and then I'm doing a 3-day photography trip in the jungle.
Oh,
Ooh.
how amazing.
Hang out
Yay.
with elephants and tigers.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
great.
So,
Oh.
but yeah, I've always wanted to do it. I've watched, I think every documentary you can about the Himalaya in that area. I've
Yeah.
watched at least once. Have you seen that new one that's on Netflix?
Probably not.
No, I can't. Anything's impossible or nothing's impossible or something like that. It's about the guy
Yes.
that did the 14 highest peaks in 6 months.
We haven't watched it, but I did notice that, and I actually added it to my
Yeah.
list to watch because I was
Watch
like,
it.
that looks
Yeah,
super
I think I have
interesting.
heard of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you need to watch it tonight. It is
it's good, huh?
phenomenal. But Yeah, and the climbing community has always been intriguing to me. It's not something I can do. I'm kind of a bigger guy.
Yeah.
Seems like most climbers are skinny and
Lightweight.
lightweight.
Like,
not this guy.
yeah. Yeah.
But-
That seems to be the stereotype on them. But
just that culture.
yeah.
I mean, the rich history, the turmoil that they went through, over the years, just to survive.
Yeah.
I mean, we're carving out towns and cities on the sides of 16,000-foot mountains.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And here Granite Peak is just under 13,000 here in Montana, and
Yeah.
it's a big deal to climb that. But I mean, they live at that elevation year round, and it's just so fascinating to me. So
Are you going to be
yeah.
there when there's any festivals and stuff going on, or any like their holidays?
I don't know. I know like the Namche Bazaar always has stuff going on,
Mhm.
and a lot of that's for tours. And I'm going in October when it's not as busy. And that was
That's
another thing
nice.
I wanted to do, is not go during peak climbing season.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and there's more drama in the sky than in October, November timeframe, so I can get some really good pictures. So yeah.
That'll be amazing.
I'm super stoked. I don't want to make my 40th year go faster, but I'm super stoked for it.
Yeah. No, and that's good to have like those big things out there to be looking forward to and working
Yeah.
towards. And I don't know. I think a lot of people get caught up in life and forget that to do that type of stuff.
Right.
To live
It's
life.
good to live that. It's honestly 3/4 of the fun is the preparing for that.
yeah.
It's going to go quick once you're there and it's going to be over, but you get to kind of drag that whole experience out and
Look
preparing for
forward
it
to
and
it.
researching for it. That's all part of the experience.
Yeah. And that's the same way with like the bird photography.
Yeah.
It's like I spend months and months and months researching an area that we're going to go, what birds I want to get, what their behaviors are, what they sound like, what their plumage looks like, what subspecies there are, and then you go there and find them.
Yeah.
Man, it's so much fun, and
Yeah.
so
I can see that. Do you already have a list? Are you working on things that you're going to try to shoot while you're over there?
not so much for Nepal. I just want to encompass the whole experience. When I go
Yeah.
to the jungle, my primary thing is elephants and tigers. Just
Yeah.
'cause you only see them in zoos. So
Right.
And I'm kind of jealous because my wife went to over there for work in that area, and she got to ride elephants.
Ah.
So I'm kind of jealous that I haven't done that yet. But
Yeah.
so I'm gonna go do that. No, I think I'm gonna go down to Dauphin Island here in April or May. It's down in the Gulf, and it's a big migration route for birds in the eastern flyaway.
Okay.
And so I'm starting to look slowly into that to see what kind of warbler species and stuff like that are there, and when the prime time to hit it is, and hopefully we get a north wind that makes them all stop on the island and
Yeah.
recover. So I'm probably going to go down there in April, or late March, early April, just kind of watching the migration patterns and seeing how that is, and go down there for 3 or 4 days and take some pictures.
Wow.
So, and then anywhere in Montana. I mean, this state is so full of history.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just like
So in the center, there's so much geographical history. That's the other part that I would like to get more into. There's certain areas that the way different mountain ranges formed and the whole history of it all. I've been kind of dipping into that as far as, I don't know, with Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson. I like the stuff that Randall Carlson puts out because he goes into an area like that and he will, with some drone footage, he'll show you how things formed in those areas and what the story was behind that and how many years ago that was. And I've been fascinated by all that type of stuff. Now, I too, I'm way big into history, and I've been on a kick with my book reading lately. But what are you reading lately, or do you have something that you're kind of stuck on?
Yeah, I'm actually reading a historical fiction series by the same author. Have you seen The Lost Kingdom on Netflix? About the Viking saga on Netflix, The
Yes.
Lost Kingdom or
Yeah.
Last Kingdom. So that author has a whole series of books about the Holy Grail, and that time frame in England. And so I'm reading his series right now, historical fiction. So it's a little bit
Yeah.
more fiction. As far as actual historical books, I did just pick one up on Teddy Roosevelt. I haven't started it yet.
Oh,
I'm kind of stuck on the podcast thing.
yeah.
So I'm listening to a Revolutionary War podcast. I've been starting to listen to a Comet series about the Mongolian Empire on Netflix. So, or not Netflix, on podcast. So
Yeah. I just finished actually a book on Marco Polo and his experiences with the Mongols, and fascinating.
yeah,
And it's this one author that I kind of went through a bunch of his books. I just went through a bunch of early explorers. I kind of did them backwards too. He did a great book on Sir Francis Drake, the first guy from Great Britain. He's actually the first. Well, there's some controversy about that, but he's actually, I'd say the first from Great Britain to circumnavigate the globe. And that was a great book on just, he was a pirate. I mean, he just raided the Spanish all the way around South America. While he didn't hurt anybody, never killed anyone, but came back and changed the complete fortune of Great Britain and put them on the road to empire. They had no respect. Nobody was giving Great Britain any respect. And it was Queen Elizabeth, I think it was, right? Wasn't that Queen Elizabeth
Yes.
at that time? And she quietly funded him. She was trying to keep that on the down low. Anyway, that's a whole book I went into. She quietly funded him because she didn't want to go to war with Spain, but she funded him to go on this thing, and it was under exploration, but it was a huge piracy expedition. He came back so loaded with gold and silver that it actually changed the fortunes of Great Britain and put them on the road toward empire. Anyway, I finished that book about Francis Drake, and then I went back. This same author, he wrote about Magellan, and I've read all about Magellan and his attempt to circumnavigate the globe. Then, because he left with like 250-something guys, and only 18 guys made it back alive, and Magellan not being one of them. Anyway, then I went back a little bit further. I went into Columbus. I'd never read about Columbus, and I finally read about Columbus. And what's the hullabaloo about Columbus? And now I get why there's a hullabaloo about Columbus, and I guess maybe that's a whole nother conversation. I could talk for a couple hours on Columbus, but I found that one fascinating. And then I went back, and the same author did one on Marco Polo.
Who's the author?
Oh man,
Did I put you on the spot?
Yes, because now I won't be able to remember his name, but I'll look it up for you. But he does a really good job. It's very well researched, and I'd probably say my favorite one was the one on Sir Francis Drake.
Yeah.
Because he was such an interesting character, and I believe that a lot of movie pirates were a lot based on.
Was it John?
I don't know that I don't know.
Sugden?
I don't know. I'm not even sure.
Hmm.
I just totally got into his books, and I was doing them all on my phone. And once you're in there, you're just on the page, and you never see the cover ever again.
It's
and
kind of sad.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't really pick it up and see the cover, but I can look those up, but those are really good. But Francis Drake, that one was super interesting because I really feel like a lot of movie pirates were based on this guy. He was super charismatic. He was a gentleman. He would bring a captain and his officers onto his ship while his guys are raiding that ship and emptying it, and then giving the guy like a memento, like a souvenir of the time that Francis Drake pillaged their ship and then put them back on their ship safely, and they totally just robbed them. And anyway, super interesting guy. The Magellan book was actually really interesting too, because come to find out, he had a slave who he was actually the slave. I want to say his name was Emmanuel, but I can't remember 100%. His slave, his personal slave, they got all the way around the world. They got over to the Philippines, and they got into these tribes over there, and the tribes are like speaking at him in whatever language is. Nobody knows what they're saying, but this slave he has, all of a sudden he's like, he's like, I understand them.
Huh.
And he was like, he didn't even know where he was from, because he got like taken when he was a small boy and probably transported along the Silk Road. He was, the Spice Islands were near there, and they were in search of the Spice Islands and a water route to the Spice Islands. And they, so when they got to the Philippines, this kid, he didn't know where he was from. But he'd been picked up when he was a kid, and he got taken over to Portugal, and he was eventually sold to Magellan's family. He was in their family, and then when they get all the way around the world, he recognizes what these guys are saying.
Wow.
And they say technically this guy was probably the first guy to actually circumnavigate, because anyway, spoiler alert, he sells out everybody, and he sells out everybody. It was super interesting, and he was never heard of again after this. But so he went back to live with those people again, and he was like, I'm not a slave anymore. Magellan got killed over there, and that's a whole nother long story. But once he got killed, this guy was like, I'm not a slave anymore. And everybody else on the ships was like, no, you're still a slave. And when we get back, you're still a slave to Magellan's wife and their family. You're still a slave, and you gotta do. And there was a big argument on the ship, and he's like, "I'm not a slave. I'm not a slave." And they're like, "No, you're a slave. You need to do what you're told." Anyway, he sold them all out. Super interesting. And he went and lived with the islanders. The islanders attacked all these guys and killed even more of these guys. Only 18 of them made it back.
Wow.
Super fascinating. I didn't know all this. They tell you this. They glance over this stuff in school.
Right. Totally.
They glance over it, and it's so not exciting the way it's told in school. And I just wish that people would get a little bit more passionate about it, get into the history of it or the story of it more than this date this was accomplished and this date this was accomplished. And really, well, what was behind all of that? Magellan's story of going around and circumnavigating, and it's interesting because this is all so well documented about the first time that these European guys are seeing glaciers and penguins and things around the southern tip of, as they're going around the Strait of Magellan. But that place was a shipwrecker, and nobody had made it around there. Nobody even, been through there. But to see the world through these early explorers' eyes is, to me, fascinating. I got hooked on that. And they have this so well documented. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. But I also got way into the Mongols for a little while, and I don't know how you say his name. People say Genghis. People say Genghis. But I went into Genghis Khan for a little while. I went into the Mongols. I read a few books on the Mongols. But
that's an amazing empire, too.
It really is. Really is.
We conquered you, but you can still use your money, your religion, your customs. Just pay me a tax.
Yeah,
we're good.
That's really what it was all about.
Yeah, but just the sheer how big that empire was.
Yeah.
And what they accomplished on horseback.
Oh, yeah.
Just amazing. Yeah, I love the Mongol Empire. There was an actual huge exhibit at Museum of the Rockies last year.
We missed
Dude, I geeked out. I was there for like 4 hours. The kids and the girls are like, or my wife are like, "Can we go now?" I'm like, "No."
We actually went right before they were doing that.
Oh, really?
Like, oh,
we saw it was coming.
Yes, and we're like, "Oh, we should go." And we never did make it back, but yeah, that was one I wanted to see. We were actually just talking about that like a month ago. I was like, "Oh, I wish
we missed that." Like, what type of stuff did they have on display there?
It was everything. I mean, they had suits of armor, they had normal clothing, they had ceremonial clothing, they had tools, weapons, they had stories. Oh, it was phenomenal. I mean, the Museum of the Rockies has great exhibits anyway, but for somebody that just I think the author that I used the book, they're historical fiction. He elaborates on the stuff that we don't know about, but the actual historical part, his name is Con Iggulden, I think. I'd have to look it up, but I think that's who the author was, and he wrote a series of 5 books about the Mongol Empire, starting out when Genghis or Temujin was a kid, and all the way up until his great-grandkids basically dissolved the empire.
Awesome.
Correct. Yeah.
But between Karakorum and going into the Song Dynasty and the more Chinese influence than the Mongol influence, and the books are phenomenal. I mean, I think I read all 5 books like in 2 months. I mean, I just couldn't put them down. But that empire is just so fascinating. So one of my trips, one of these days, and maybe my photography will take me there, is I want to backpack through Mongolia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be super cool.
Before I get too old.
Did you see that series called Long Way Round?
No.
So the guy Ewan McGregor and a buddy of his, they took motorcycles and they rode from Scotland. They made a series of it, and there's several episodes, but they are on like, I don't know, I can't remember if they were like BMW bikes or whatever, and they ride across Mongolia. And they actually rode their motorcycles all the way around the world. And so they go down, they go through Eastern Europe. They end up having to get permits to go through all these countries, and they ride through Mongolia on motorcycle, and they're like camped out with like tribal people and just showing some of that whole area before they get over into Siberia and some things like that. But it's a really good series. They have 2 series called Long Way Round, but the next one, they actually go from Scotland down to the Cape of Good Hope off of South Africa, down to South Africa, and they ride all the way down. So that's a good one, too. I'll have to give you this, or lead you on to this book about the Marco Polo one, because it goes all into that. He actually befriends the Khan of the last great Khan.
Yeah, Kublai.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he, and he actually for 17 years is out there living amongst them became
It became like an emissary for
Yeah.
Kublai.
yes, yeah. So yeah, you're all over all this. That's
Oh yeah,
That's awesome.
I love it, man.
And same type of thing though. He writes about all of his. He went way into South Asia, Southeast
Yeah.
Asia. He traveled all over the place and saw a whole bunch of stuff. And then some people tried to discredit him, and they were like, "Yeah, he made up a lot of this or whatever." But then they've actually, I can't remember what year they found it, but they've actually found other writings where they talk about these other events that happened in China in these cities, and they mention these foreigners. And the way they are described, people believe now that was Marco Polo, his father and his uncle.
Right.
That he was actually, because it wasn't just by himself, he was there with his father and his uncle.
Yeah.
But they were saying there's like 3 foreigners that were here at this event, and they're like, oh, see, now we have actually evidence that he was here at this time. He gave us eyewitness accounts of these things, and it gave it kind of a verification, or at least so. Anyway, but Marco Polo's travels were, I didn't realize that once it got written, it explains how it all got written, but that it got rewritten and retranslated, and a lot of it got to be a mess. And so a lot of people have had different versions of it over the years, but this author does a really good job of compiling all of this stuff and giving it a good timeline, and going into Marco Polo's last years of who was he once he got home, and goes into how he eventually goes back to Venice and becomes a businessman, entrepreneur,
Right.
and whatever. And that all gets interesting because he gets a little wacko once he gets home. But that's a super good book. I think
I'm gonna read it. You're gonna
Yeah.
tell me who it is.
Yeah, I'll find that on there.
Okay.
For sure. But yeah, and that author though, he does good. He did good with the Columbus thing. I thought Columbus was fascinating. I had never read anything on Columbus. Have you read anything on Columbus, really?
Not much.
I hadn't until just this year. But anyway, I get the controversy about Columbus. I think it was ugly times, though.
Yeah.
And
But isn't that, I mean, that's something that we're lacking right now, is the controversy. We're trying to romanticize history and get rid of the controversy. I mean, I don't want to get political, but
yeah,
that's part of the allure of history is reading about the controversial and stuff that, like, oh my gosh, that's morbid, but it happened.
yeah.
Let's just make sure it doesn't happen again. And right now we're trying to romanticize it to the point to where we don't want to even know it happened.
No, they are. Everybody's trying to erase that, or they're trying to hold things of back then to today's standard.
Right.
Like, this is appalling. Well,
Right.
it was appalling back then, but it was pretty widespread back then, or whatever the behavior was.
Right.
They look at it through a different lens instead
They
of
do.
looking of the lens of the time.
They do. And it's sad. And like you said about the way they teach history in school and the way it's progressing to learn about history or not learn about history.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm hoping that we have a paradigm shift to where we're going to be like, no, it's important again to learn history in its raw and controversial form.
Yeah.
You know? And
Right.
So,
And that there weren't things that were just black and white. There was a
Right.
lot of gray area. There was a
Yeah.
lot of, there wasn't any such thing as like, oh, this guy was a good guy, or oh, this guy was a bad guy. There were some bad guys, but a lot of the good guys did some bad things too. And
Right.
that's okay. That's how what happened,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like,
you know, like
we
we've
can
been
acknowledge that.
taught that President Lincoln was this phenomenal president.
Hmm.
He let 800,000 Americans die
yeah,
under his presidency.
yeah,
So if that happened today, would he be a good president? You know?
yeah.
And so
He did a lot of things. He suspended habeas corpus.
right.
You
And so we have to look at the good and the bad. There's no black and white. And
Yeah.
and I think that's what they're trying to do with history is make it black and white.
yeah,
And it's sad. And I hope there's a generation still, and maybe it falls on us. You know, we're kind of at the tail end of that generation. It's like, no, we have to learn it for exactly what it was. We have to take the controversial and talk about it.
Yeah.
Not get rid of it and erase it.
yeah.
You know, because I think that's going to be a disaster for us.
I think you're right. I think so many people are trying to erase history, whether it's statue toppling or attacking different monuments or whatever else, and they're trying to erase it all, and you can't erase it, and we're going to repeat these problems. And it's okay to come to terms with our history.
Right.
Like, it's okay. Like, we don't have to be threatened by our history. So there was good guys, there was bad guys, there was
In between guys.
yeah.
You know, they did good, they did some bad.
Yeah.
but they were a shaper of where we are now.
Yeah.
And we can't forget that,
Yeah.
you know.
For sure. I actually finished up a book by what's his name? He did like John Adams. He did
It's not Stephen Ambrose. No. I know who you're talking about.
It's gosh, he did Custer and Crazy Horse.
Yeah.
And it came out, and he wrote it I didn't realize he wrote it in 1976, so I just found it and I read it.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by this thing, and I still haven't gotten over to the Custer Monument and the Last Stand.
Really?
I still haven't gotten over there
It's
in all
a cool
these
place.
years.
It's a cool place.
And I got to get over there. I've read probably 4 books on that place now,
Yeah.
and I've not gotten over there. I'm kind of embarrassed about that, but that book was awesome too. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that one, but it was called I don't know. It's amazing how much they have documented about Crazy Horse and his early life, leading up to him being killed in I think he was killed in 1878. I want to say 2 years after Custer was killed, and he that was all fascinating. But anyway, at the end of the Civil War, Sheridan and Sherman and all those guys that you hear about in the Civil War, what a role they played out here in the Western campaigns.
You're right.
That shaped everything now about where, all the areas that we live. I mean, it shaped it for everybody. But I want to say it was Sherman. It was Sherman who wiped out all the bison. It was a campaign of the only way we're going to get these, the natives out of here, they're kicking our tail on the plains, is what I'm going to do to them what I did to the South when I burned my way through the South and I burned the supply lines. This is
supply
stuff.
line.
Yeah, their supply line. Everything is based around the bison, everything, and that's their whole economy, their whole way of life, their whole everything. And anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But you don't learn any of this in school. We're scared of certain things. We don't want to go there, but I think it's okay to we should be going there. We should be learning these things. That's the only time I found out that the U.S. Army has done an unconditional surrender was in 1868 to the northern, to the Sioux and Northern Cheyenne. I mean, that's the only time they've ever done an unconditional surrender. Yeah. And they gave up all of these Forts Phil Kearny, and there was 3-4 forts that they had to get out of. The Sioux were like, no, you have to leave.
And that was all here in our backyard.
It was all here. Now I'm telling April, we got to go find these places. There was these epic battles that happened here, and all these things. And it's the only time that, anyway. So one of the things they did in that surrender was okay, we'll surrender. We'll leave the forts. They said, no. They said, you have to leave the forts completely, and you can't use them for anything. And as soon as they pulled out of there, they burned them. The Sioux burned them and everything. Yeah. But one thing they did in there, as Sherman did, is he just he put it in there that, hey, once the buffalo are gone, you guys have to start farming and whatever. And they were like, yeah, whatever. There's no end to the buffalo. The buffalo will never be gone. But then Sherman opened it up to contractors to just come in and just start annihilating the buffalo.
Yep.
And at a rate just unbelievable. And what that has done to the what's the word for that? The whole
ecosystem.
The whole ecosystem, yes, of North America
right.
has changed because of that act of one man. One man who did that. Anyway, how it changed all of that, and changed that way of life for those people and everything else. And just so many things have been impacted from those types of decisions.
So we could spend 4 hours just on the history of Montana and not even get the purpose or the tip of it,
I know. It's incredible.
It's crazy.
It is incredible. So,
but so we should all be having domesticated buffalo instead of cattle.
Yeah.
If Sherman wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Who knows? When
I read that book, there were so many things I was like, oh, mind blown about these things. But you're right, though. These are the things that we should be talking about. I share these things now with my kids as I'm reading these things. I'm like, hey, did you realize this? Did you know this? Look at it like this. Look at it through this lens.
And we're at such an advantage right now. We have so much information at our fingertips, more than any other time in the history of the world.
Crazy.
If there's something that I don't agree with you with, I can research the crap out of it and come full circle and be like, you know what? Milo was right. I just
Or this is why he's wrong. This
Yeah.
is why there's an overwhelming amount of evidence of why
Yeah.
he's wrong.
You know, I think people forget that.
Yeah.
You know, we see something on Instagram or we see something on Facebook and it's gospel.
Yeah.
But no, we have the ability to research it to ad nauseum,
Yeah.
you know, and A, form our own opinion, and B, look at the facts and the evidence.
Yeah.
You know, and I think people forget that sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. I think people get too wrapped up in, I don't know, having to be right and having to
Yeah.
force what their thoughts are and everybody else, even about history and everything, their version of history. And I don't know.
You know, and you know, I love being wrong because then I learn from it. You know?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, like if I'm telling you something that's not right, I want to hear the right version.
Right.
Like tell me. Like
Right.
even when it comes to like political things or other stuff I'm researching, I'm like, did you know this is what's going on? Like I'm not, you know, I'm totally open to if somebody were to come to me and say, no, that's not right, and you're falling for this or this, and like I'm completely open to it. Then what is it? Then tell me what it is. But there's a lot of people who do not care about what the truth is.
I know.
You can just slap them with the truth, and they are like, no, I'm not. I will never be open to that.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's sad.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what makes it makes life exciting.
Yeah.
Is we having that ability.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say that a 40-year-old can't learn a whole new craft? And that's what I'm doing with photography.
Yeah.
I'm 40 years old in 2 days, and I'm learning about birds, stuff that I never knew existed. I mean, I paid attention in science class in high school and college, and biology, but not like this.
Not. Yeah.
You know, or history, or
It was not a fraction as exciting back then,
You
was
know?
it?
no.
What if you really had though a guy who was passionate about it, like how you're passionate about it now? I bet you could excite any 16-year-old kid into being, you know, when you're talking about it, you know, you probably would have made a great history teacher.
I might have, you know, but I think a lot of it is the system.
Yeah.
You know, we don't pay our teachers enough.
No,
we
they get
don't-
bogged down.
Right. We don't incentivize our teachers enough. We use the education system as essentially how to prepare for college, not prepare for life.
Yeah.
You know, and so kids aren't learning life until they're 18
Yeah.
and in college, where I think we need to start that. That's what education should be, is learning for life, not, you know, this date, this happened, and A equals C.
Yeah.
But that's just me. And like I said, I'm not a teacher. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a cop. You know, and I try to have that influence on people when I can. Like I said earlier before we started, I rarely see people at their best.
Yeah.
I'm there when they're at their worst, or when they're down in the bottom for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You know, and if I have an impact on one person that says, "Hey, tomorrow I'm going to do better," then that's all I can ask for,
Yeah.
right? And I think, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's where I found my calling, you know, I think, is how I'm supposed to help people. And I think that's all any of us can do, is I think we're all meant to help people in
Yeah.
one way or another. I mean, look what you guys have done for the community. I mean, look what we're doing right now. Who would have thought that there'd be this setup in a podcast in Columbus, Montana, right? I mean, so look what you guys have done in such a short amount of time with BFL.
Yeah.
You know, look at what, you know, the houses have done with the community, with Beartooth Ford and all that. But there's so many people that have done so much in this, and even in this small community. And I think sometimes we forget that
Yeah.
our role is to make the person next to us better, to make them
Right.
strive for something. you
Yeah.
know? And it's hard to remember that sometimes as a cop, and so that's where all this
That's
all this comes into, you know.
being a cop is like the epitome of being in a system where you could get bogged down in the negative. I mean, it would be. I think that the photography thing has got to be such a great outlet for you, because I think there's a lot of guys. I don't want to stereotype everybody, but I think there's a lot of guys who don't have that positive outlet that get bogged down in it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it helps you keep perspective so that you can deal with things fresh and in a positive way.
It totally does. You know, my wife is the first one to be like, "Hey, get your camera and go for 2 days.
Yeah.
You're starting to get in that headspace.
Yeah.
You need to go." And so she'd be like, "Look, I got the kids. Just go to the mountains for 2 days. Take your camera.
Yeah.
Come back and be you." You
Yeah.
know? And yeah, it's been a huge outlet for me, and I'm so thankful for it, honestly. Like I said, if I never sell another picture, not a big deal. But if I didn't have it now in my life, I don't know. I need it. I crave it, you know. So
Well, you're like coming up on like, well, you're not like right there, but I hope you sell a ton of pictures. I'm rooting for you to be like, boom, like I've got this figured out to where when I retire from,
yeah.
you know, being a deputy, that, you know, you go all in on that. Like that's what
I do.
I'm rooting for.
I mean, deep down, I'm like, man, if I could just do this, and
Yeah.
have enough money to be, and still make it where I love it. And
Yeah.
like, man, if I don't sell this picture or do this for a client, I'm not going to pay rent or, pay my house mortgage, you know. But that's, totally,
Yeah.
So if I can be like, hey, send me to Mongolia, let me take pictures of whatever.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Yeah.
So.
No,
But until then, I just keep doing it because I love it.
Yeah. No, that's the only way to do it. If you can just do it for those reasons. If you are focused on that dollar, it's not going to happen for you.
Right.
You got to love it. You got to love the essence of it. If you love it and you just do it for the love of it, someday you'll get paid to do it.
Yeah.
It'll just, that way it will come. But I think the people that they want it too bad and they want to force it and they want to whatever, like this podcast, like I have people, say to me, well, you're never going to be as big as Joe Rogan. Well, I'm not doing it to be as big as Joe Rogan. We're doing this to find those people that are doing things in our community and have those experiences and learn these things about people that are around us. And I'm in the back of that trailer cooking. I don't ever get to really see people or interact, but we were like, we're not doing it for that reason. We're doing it for the reason of, hey, we want to do it because we want to do it for fun, and it's fun.
Yeah.
So
I'm having a blast.
Awesome.
So.
I am too. So and I'm looking forward to having you back in here in the future. I want to hear about the trip to Nepal.
Absolutely.
We'll have you back and
Okay.
and whenever. If you got something to talk about, man,
Oh.
nail us down. We'll come talk about it.
Oh. Invite me back.
I will.
We'll talk about.
Well, you have an
whatever.
open invite, so just be like, "Hey, I just finished a good book. We got to talk about it.
Right.
You got to read this book, and then I'll read the book, and then we'll hammer it out."
There you go. Or we'll go to the Big Hole Monument, and then we'll go over to Battle of Little Bighorn, and then we'll be like, "Dude, did you know this?" And
yeah, we'll geek out over all that.
yeah,
Your own little book club.
I know, right?
Book
It used to
podcast club.
Oh,
Yeah.
podcast club. Well,
Yeah.
book podcast.
yeah, it used to be that we would trade books back and forth. Actually, I think I was just reading books that he was telling me about because he had a bunch of good books. And now I got to find that Andrew Garcia one.
Yeah, and then I want that Marco Polo one.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll give you that one for sure. There, because there's so many good things out there. Life is richer than I don't know. Maybe other people, I don't give people the benefit of the doubt, but I see people just slogging away, going through life, say the 9 to 5, but.
Or in our case, like all night long.
Yeah.
Get a few hours of sleep when the sun's already up.
You're right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There's got to be more to life than what a lot of us get trapped into. So it's exciting for us to meet with people who are getting it in their own way.
And we don't even have to go far.
No.
I mean, look what I've done in my yard.
I know. That's amazing to me. I'm like,
so
I know. That's where I was like, April's going to be bugged with me. But
and where you guys are, there's a chance for a lot more. You got the river close by. You've got the pine trees. You got a little bit of the sagebrush, that kind of thing. I mean, I bet you guys could get over 100 species.
Yeah, probably so.
So then I'm going to have to start coming out there and
setting up. There's a nice piece of state land out behind us.
Yep.
And I think we get a little runoff from that area.
Yeah.
Recently, we just had a bear this summer that was kind of getting into things out there. But there's elk that kind of tromp through every now and then. I've been sitting at my dining room table, and I'm like, all of a sudden, this cow elk just came trotting up my drive. I thought it was a big dog from a ways away.
Yeah.
And I was like, just out of the corner of my eye, I look out the window, and I'm like, that is a huge dog coming up through here. And I'm like, it comes loping up my driveway and runs right past my window on up over the hill. And I'm like, that's a cow elk just running through my yard. And I'm like, this is one of those moments. I'm like, I just had a moment here. Like,
right?
I wouldn't have had these moments if I was still down in the Vegas area. Like, I don't know. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, me too.
You guys are lucky. You guys went to school here. You guys grew up in this area.
I know. And like we were talking, it's like I couldn't wait to leave.
I know.
When I graduated, I was like, I'm out of here. And then 4 years later, I'm like, I want to go back.
Yeah. Now it's good that you get out and see what you have.
And I got to see, I was stationed in Europe for 2 years. I mean, man.
So were you in Germany then?
Yeah. I was stationed in
awesome.
Germany. I loved it. I wish I would have been taking pictures then. I went to I went everywhere. I went to 26 countries. Every weekend I went somewhere.
Wow.
I saw 26 different countries, and I still was like, man, there's no place like Montana.
But now you can share that with your wife. You two can go over there and go see all those areas. You kind of know what you now.
Right.
I don't know. You go hit it and share it with somebody.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, totally.
Well, cool, man. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to come in here and and do this with us. I really do. I kind of like pop the question to people like, hey, you should be on my podcast, or would you consider that, or whatever. And I don't know how people are going to take it, but you're super open about it. And I appreciate it.
Anytime, man.
So
it was awesome.
All right, cool. We'll do this again. I've got to hear about the Nepal trip, and
Heck yeah.
we'll do all that.
All right.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot.